Hello, everybody, and welcome to a non-podcast, non-meme type video. I basically wanted to make more shit besides just memes. As far as video essay or commentary type videos that I wanted to make, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. There's nobody really right now that I want to cancel, per se. So I thought I'd just talk about something really dumb, like fucking Pokemon Sword and Shield and the controversy around it, because people are fucking man-children. So, since I don't have any famous YouTuber friends to talk about this with, I'm going to go ahead and call up my good pal Matt, who's something of a Pokemon expert himself. Hey, Matt, do you want to talk about, Pokemon?
How fucking dare you interrupt me in the middle of my prayer session! You know, 7 EST to 9 EST, I am praying to the Lord! I swear, I tell you this every day!
Yeah, do you want to talk about Pokemon?
Oh, yeah.
So what do you think about it?
It's pretty good.
Cool, thanks. Bye. So I don't really know what that was, but we're just gonna talk about Pokemon, I guess. So Pokemon Sword and Shield, if you don't know, is the newest Pokemon game, specifically the first game in the series, mainline game, you could say, on the Nintendo Switch. Now, obviously there have been the Let's Go games, but those are kind of just like casual Pokemon Go on a console type shit. And while people were initially excited about the game being on the Switch, the first of its kind, people actually ended up being pretty upset about it right before launch. So one of the first things that really pissed people off was the Dexit, as people have been calling it, around the internet and on the subreddits. The Dexit is basically the fact that they cut down the Pokemon you could get in the game for the first time ever. So Pokemon has been around for about 20 plus years at this point. So there's almost 1,000 Pokemon. And they basically explained, hey, we basically can't make all the animations for these and put them into a Switch game, which people who have been gathering those Pokemon since like Gen 2 or Gen 3 and moving them forward, people were pretty goddamn upset. In fact, people are still upset on the subreddit about it, posting almost daily about how they miss the Pokemon that they've been moving up from previous Pokemon games, or not being able to catch them all as the American marketing wanted people to do all before this. In addition to the Dexit, people are also pretty upset about the graphics and overall the difficulty of the game. But as somebody who actually played the game as opposed to boycotting it, it's actually one of the best games in the franchise. So going through the complaints, starting with the Dexit. I can understand why, if you've been carrying Pokemon since like Gen 3 was my first round of Pokemon games. I've been watching Pokemon basically since the beginning. I can see why you'd be upset going through all the process of getting it all the way up to like Gen 6, every generation jump having its own tedious method of moving your Pokemon to the new games. I can kind of see why you'd be upset, but they're not gone forever. These specific generations, with this specific console leap, just wasn't able to handle it. So somebody at Game Freak actually fucked up in this regard by saying that these Pokemon were cut for development time to be put towards new animations and models. And people were quick to point out on Twitter, like, hey, these reuse the same models from Let's Go or Pokemon Go. And I think Game Freak, or whoever was speaking on their behalf, was more so talking about the new Pokemon, as well as new animations that may not necessarily have been used in those previous games. So, for example, when a Pokemon is celebrating, you win a battle, the Dynamax. Those are new animations, I would have to believe, for some of the Pokemon, especially the older ones. You're also seeing the gender variants of Pokemon, the regional forms for any ones that decided to include. Meowth at this point has 3 different generational forms, 2 different evolutionary lines in those regional variations. These regional variants, they're fucking dumb. I'm sorry. I understand why you might be mad, but as somebody who actually played the game, having 400 Pokemon to catch is a much more reasonable goal than trying to catch almost 900. The goal, at the end of the day, to catch them all, get everything in the Pokedex, which is already a task that's almost impossible with what's available in the games generation to generation. You have to trade stuff up. You have to trade between the version exclusives. It's a whole task. You can never catch them all anyway without transferring from previous generations or buying 2 versions of the game, having friends, or whatever. It was never an achievable goal in the game. However, with this game, having 400 Pokemon, being able to catch us all, I've actually almost done it. For the first time in my history of playing Pokemon, I've almost caught them all. And for the kids who are probably playing this, because there are new children every fucking year, I can see why them having this as the first Pokemon game, it's better to have that as an achievable goal. I do hope, though, that this is not a permanent change that they made where every new generation has just a select few hundred Pokemon to catch. I do hope with like a Sword and Shield 2, which I probably wouldn't buy at this point, maybe, just for a new story or something, or the Gen 4 remakes, which I will absolutely buy because that shit is fucking great. Now, to talk about the graphics for the game. The graphics are good. The graphics are fine. Sure, there's a bit of pop-in the wild area, but the aesthetic of the game would look so weird if shit was more realistic. Like, I don't know what they're wanting. It's a cartoon anime type of aesthetic, especially in this game. This game is anime as fuck. People have tried to do their own renders online of like, oh my god, look at this realistic tree graphic that I put in. It's like, okay, that's just a super realistic tree next to these fucking anime shonen style monsters. It doesn't coexist properly. It does not mesh. It's not good. And the other big complaint that people have made is that the game is too easy. While I personally went through without actually having a party wipe up until about the 4th gen, I can kind of see why people would say that. With introductions of stuff like the EXP All, where all of your party gets experience for points from battle, I can kind of see why, oh, I don't have to grind anymore, therefore this game's overall going to be easier because I can progress through it faster. And while I guess you could say that this game is easier than like the older Pokemon games, Sun and Moon, it was all tutorials. It was so handholdy. I could not finish Pokemon Moon. That was the first Pokemon game that I did not play through all the way. And you can see why. They changed up the formula too much. There was way too much tutorial and cutscenes that lasted way too long throughout the game experience for it to be an open world adventure like of my own making. Whereas this, there are points in the story where your rival or your other rival or your evil rival, I guess, they stop you when you have a cutscene with them, but it's all in service of the story, that anime type shit of you beating people throughout your adventure. If you do want a challenge in this game, however, there are still some challenging parts. For example, the 4th gym with Bea, the fighting type gym leader, she kicked my ass at least once or twice because I wasn't really prepared for that gym. The champion battle, I didn't expect the fucking Charizard to know a grass move. That was some horse shit. For the people who want a more competitive or challenging experience, that's what the online play and the battle tower stuff in-game is for. It's the post-game where you're fighting people at a level at or above what you're normally playing at.
You have failed the vibe test.
Ultimately, those negatives don't stop this game or set of games, whatever you want to call it, from being one of the top games in the franchise, in my opinion. So I do want to go and get into what I think is the positive aspects of this game that make it better than most Pokemon games previous. This game does many things that overall makes this a more positive experience for me, being also a man-child that enjoys these games. So first of all, this game is the fucking best for efficiency. This game makes so many quality of life changes that are for the better. I know HMs weren't really a thing in the last generation either. You kind of got to skip them, but in this one, it just skips over them too. It's pretty great. All your upgrades like surfing are added to your bike, so you don't really have to worry about tedious shit like HM slaves in this game. Want to trade a Pokemon, but you don't want to walk all the way back to a PC because that would be super tedious? You can do it directly from the menu now, which is fucking amazing. You can, if you're not in like a forbidden area where like a gym or something else like that, where obviously you shouldn't be able to trade your Pokemon out, you can do it on the fly, especially during the wild area and stuff like that. It is so fantastic to be able to switch your Pokemon out on the fly. The EXP All, which I kind of mentioned before, I love it. honestly, the EXP share was pretty great, but the EXP all, which is just like a default now, I love it. Now my Pokemon aren't getting caught in the dust where I have a starter that's a level 100 and then I have other Pokemon that are like in their high 40s maybe by the end of the game and in the post game. All my Pokemon can theoretically achieve a similar level of competency. And to coincide with that, in the post game, all the Pokemon in the wild area are bumped up to level 60 or higher, meaning that you don't have to go back to the wild area, catch something at like level 8, and then raise it all the way up like you would have had to before. So if I want to go to the wild area, I'm like, hey, that's a really cool Pokemon. I wish I could have it on me. I go to the wild area in the post game, I'm like, wow, that's a really neat Pokemon. I want that on my team as opposed to this shit that I've had the whole time. I can just swap that out on the fly and boom, it's just a regular member of my team. It's earning EXP just like all my other Pokemon, and it'll get ramped up much sooner than all the grindy shit you would have had to do in the previous games. Grinding is not fun. Grinding is tedious. Grinding is a waste of time in almost all cases. I can see how this could take away some of the challenge of like a Nuzlocke or just more hardcore players, but to be fair, the games are meant for children. A Nuzlocke run can still work in this game mode. Your Pokemon can still faint. It's just slightly harder to if you're actually battling throughout the game like you're supposed to, as opposed to running away constantly. You could still theoretically be under-leveled in this game. You just don't have to be, and they make it more convenient not to be. Another thing I love about this game is the story. Like I already said, it's anime as shit. You got a rival, and an evil rival, and a rival that's not really evil, even though they were hyped up to be like the villain team leader, but it's really just a gym leader, whatever. Is that spoilers? I don't know. The world just feels lived in this region. Obviously, Dynamaxing is very much a gimmick of this game. I miss Mega Evolutions just as much as the next person is, but Dynamaxing, they at least made it make sense in this game, and hopefully it won't come back for future games, especially the Gen 4 remakes, which I'm sure will be amazing. It all makes sense in this region. The Gym Challenges is a yearly event that you're taking part in because you got endorsed by a champion who just so happens to be your friend's brother. So it makes sense why you're going through this region. Everybody's hyping you up. These Gym Challenges are these massive stadium events. By the way, it's just so fucking cool, especially when combined with some of the best gym battle music that I've ever heard in my life. The story on at least a surface level also deals with shit that like you think would have been addressed before. Like you constantly kicking the rival's ass actually affects the rival whenever he gets beat by another rival of the two of you. He just gets depressed. The evil rival that you've been fighting the whole time actually finds his place as being a new gym leader just because of his focus of typing and his affinity for the color pink. I don't know how else to say it. The world just feels lived in, and you feel like you're interacting with these real over-the-top characters that it's just fucking fun. It's just fun to go through the world and see the different stadiums and the different gym leaders, and they actually have a role in the world. You see them during the opening ceremonies, you see them at the end, in the tournaments, all competing to be champion just like you. They're not just these one-off characters, like in the earlier games, like Gen 1 and the remakes, where you interact with pretty much every gym leader once in their gym. You have your one conversation with them, and then you never see them again in the game. This actually gives context to the whole Pokemon adventure story that we've seen so much for 20 years. Lastly, while I do think the animations could have probably been a bit better, the custom attack animations, all the cool shit, seeing overworld Pokemon in a mainline game is just so fucking cool. It's just so cool to be able to see the Pokemon you're going to fight against, run away from them. The fucking strong Pokemon in the wild area that you have to run away from, otherwise you might die, just straight up. This just overall feels like the next step for Pokemon. And it correlates with the console jump between DS and Switch consoles. I think it can only go up from here. They can add the Pokemon back. They can maybe change up any graphics that people think may be an issue for this. I think Pokemon Sword and Shield are overall just huge leaps for the franchise as far as quality of life, being able to see overworld Pokemon and just making it feel like a lived-in world. It's just fucking fun to go through, which is something I haven't felt in a while because Sun and Moon was so handholdy and it just felt like a video game. But this, with the wild area, I feel I can go explore and it's just a fucking open area full of wild monsters that might try to kill me.
You violated the law! You violated...
I think this is the leap that Pokemon needed after X and Y. X and Y was a great bump to 3D from the previous Black and White games, but Sun and Moon was so handholdy, it was trying to do something new, which really didn't quite fit with the format, with the trials. With Sword and Shield, it's just so good. It's just so Pokemon. It's so genuine. It's so fun. It's just, it brings me back to being a kid. It's hard to explain. It's just Pokemon. It's Pokemon at its core, what you imagine it being as a kid. Now they have a power of the console, which is still not as powerful as regular consoles like the Xbox One, the PS4, or whatever. It's still a bump up from the DS. They can do the massive gym battles. They can do the overworld Pokemon that makes it feel like the world you imagined when you were a kid. Overall, this game has a place in my heart, I guess. It might be just nostalgia overall, but I'm incredibly excited to see where the franchise goes. Hate the game if you want to, boycott it if you want to. I personally had a hell of a time.